It is the first Friday of the month, which means it's Jobs Day, and we've got new numbers for unemployment and jobs. 201,000 jobs were added in August. The unemployment rate remained at 3.9%. More good news, average hourly earnings saw an increase of 2.9% year over year. This is the biggest annual pay rise in more than 9 years. There's plenty of room to grow, however. As we've discussed before, 2.9% inflation over the past year erodes these gains that workers are seeing in their paychecks. Stephanie and I are going to talk about this in just a second. What we are seeing is an even bigger increase for workers. We need an increase for workers to feel the difference. After years of strong economic growth and low unemployment rates, we'd expect that employers would raise pay even more to be able to attract more skilled workers to open positions. We're not seeing that happen yet. The 2.9% wage growth is good. It's not great. Stephanie, I know, and listen, I've said this for every administration, because on Jobs Day, every administration touts how good it actually is. 2.9% looks good to us because we haven't seen it for a long time. But to the average worker who does pay more for gas, who does pay more for health care, who does pay more for child care, for university, for their student, it's a wash.
It's a wash. But it's better than where we were
better than not
a month
having a wash,
ago.
better than being
but
negative.
That's it. It's better than where we were a month ago. So at the very least, we're going in the right direction, and that is certainly a positive. Another way to go in the right direction is to bring this fella in, CNBC editor-at-large and our dear friend, John Harwood. All right, John. White House Council of Economic Advisors released a report this week that claims inflation-adjusted wages have risen by a full 1% over the last year. That flies in the face of today's figures from the Labor Department. Help us understand this.
Well, what they're trying to do is look for a metric that produces a more favorable number. And there's nothing wrong with looking at benefits and a broader measure of workers' well-being. But of course, if you do that, then you've got to do it for economic periods in the past. And any economic period would look better when healthcare, the value of healthcare and the cost of healthcare is rising, when workers are getting their healthcare through their employer. That's going to reflect in their total compensation. So it is simply a way of trying to spin slow wage growth and make it look a little better, but it doesn't change the underlying picture, which is what you have been discussing, which is that, yes, wages are rising, but inflation is also rising depending on what measure. Right. We're either going a little bit backwards because of inflation, or people are getting a little bit ahead. But the point is, we need to be a lot ahead.
There seems to be a dog interested in this report of yours, by the way, behind you.
There is a dog interested in this report.
Disinterested in
or
this report.
Who doesn't agree.
Yeah, not necessarily interested.
In fairness, all administrations do this. Every time there is a jobs report, they find the I think the dog's going to bite them. They find the best way to spin it. By the way,
Allie, that's what they're supposed to do. Any corporation, any White House, they're going to take a number and they're going to spin it to look better.
That's fine. It's not terrible. As Stephanie says, it's not terrible. However, John, there were losses, job losses in the auto sector and in manufacturing, which is not typical of the last few years. Makes me think it's got something to do with the trade war.
No question about it. And every economist will tell you that the trade war is the one thing on the horizon right now which has the potential to really undercut some of the short-term stimulus that we've gotten from the tax bill and higher government spending. It is a drag on the economy. Over time, other things will be a drag, like rising deficits, but in the near term, that is certainly a risk, and it's one of the things that candidates are talking about. I'm out here in California, in Orange County, where there are many contested races, and the Republican who is touting the strong economy says tariffs are one thing she disagrees with the president on, and so does the Democratic candidate.
It's interesting. The president touts the strong economy. Republicans do. But Republicans who are currently running in this midterm cycle don't talk about it, because as far as trickle down goes, it hasn't trickled down yet. John, quickly before we go, this is a good jobs number. Does this push the Fed one step closer to raising rates? Because that would make logical sense.
Or continuing to raise rates as they've been doing.
But we know the president, he doesn't like that, though he did when Obama was in office.
I do think so, Stephanie. The fact that you both have labor force participation at the levels where it is and wages beginning to rise, that is going to encourage the Fed, I think, to be a little more cautious about overheating in the economy. And so it could be good news today, but potentially counterproductive if you're Donald Trump and looking to not have the Fed be as aggressive as it might want to be.
Yeah, nobody likes that happening when there's an election. A lot of presidents and others have blamed the Fed in hindsight. Hey, MSNBC fans, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there and click on any of the videos here to watch the latest interviews and highlights. You can get more MSNBC for free every day with our newsletters. Just visit msnbc.com/newsletters to sign up now.